How I got my boss's job and all of my coworkers a 15% raise. I started as a machine operator apprentice in a factory that wasn't too small, but definitely wasn't one of the giants you might think of. It was in a country in the EU, but I'll keep the exact location to myself. I was fresh out of school, with more enthusiasm than knowledge about what I was diving into. The factory was known for its quality products, and getting an apprenticeship there wasn't easy. I remember walking in on the first day, trying to look confident, but probably failing to hide my nervousness. I was assigned to work as a machine operator apprentice. This meant I was going to learn how to run the machines that produced parts. These parts went into all sorts of things, from cars to household appliances. The job sounded straightforward, but trust me, it was anything but that. At the beginning, the machinery looked more intimidating up close, and the sound they made was a constant loud background noise I wasn't used to. The apprenticeship was hands-on from day one. I was assigned to a machine that I'd only seen in pictures before that day. The person training me, let's call him Joe, was patient but firm. He made it clear that attention to detail was crucial. A small mistake could lead to a defective product, or worse, a safety incident. The work was hard, no doubt about it. My hands were sore and I went home exhausted every day. There was something satisfying about seeing a piece of raw material go into the machine and come out as a part of something useful. I learned not just about the machine, but also about the products we were making and their importance. After a month of working in production, something unexpected happened. I was called into the office. Up until that point, the office had been a somewhat mysterious place where the suits worked, and I didn't have much reason to visit. They asked me if I would be interested in doing some holiday replacement work in the sales/quality department. The offer surprised me. It meant better hours in a cleaner working environment, but it was a world I knew nothing about. Despite the uncertainty, I said yes. I thought it might be a good opportunity to learn something new, and frankly, the idea of working in a cleaner space was appealing. On my first day, I swapped my usual attire for something a bit more office appropriate and made my way to a part of the factory I had rarely visited. Marta, before she left for her holiday, had a data walk me through the basics, the different systems we used, how to access and interpret the data, and the kinds of reports I need to generate. It was a lot to take in, especially since my experience up to that point had been purely practical, working with my hands rather than a computer. Despite the initial overwhelm, I found my footing quicker than I expected. The systems, while complex, were logically laid out. Since I had been manufacturing the parts that were now just numbers and specifications on my screen, I had an advantage. I understood the practical side of the data I was analyzing, which helped me make sense of the figures and reports. When Marta returned, I expected to go back to my previous role, but the department had other plans for me. Impressed with my work, they offered me a permanent position on the team. The decision to stay wasn't difficult. The new role offered a better work-life balance, and I was intrigued by the challenges I presented. It was a significant shift from where I had started, but it felt like the right next step. Over the course of 7 years, our department went through a lot of changes. We started as a small team of 5, and due to the company deciding to shuffle things around, our numbers grew. By the time all the dust settled on the restructuring, we were a solid team of 15. Each new person brought something unique to the table, making us more efficient and honestly, a lot more fun to be around. First, there was Ben, who joined us not long after the restructuring began. He was fresh from college, full of energy, and eager to prove himself. What he lacked in experience, he made up for with the willingness to learn and a knack for problem solving that made him an instant asset. Then came Leah. She was a bit more experienced, having worked in a similar role at another company. Leah brought a level of organization to our team that we didn't even know we were missing. Her methods might have seemed a bit rigid at first, but it didn't take long for us to see the benefits. About 3 years in, we welcomed Raj. He had a technical background that none of us could match, coming from an engineering position. His insight into the manufacturing process helped bridge a gap between our department and the production floor, making communication smoother and misunderstandings fewer. Amidst these arrivals, there was June. She wasn't new. In fact, June had been with the company longer than any of us. Over time, she became the office grandma. Everyone loved June. She had a way of making the office feel like home. If you were having a bad day, a few minutes with June and somehow it didn't seem so bad anymore. Her desk was where you'd find sympathy, advice, or just a candy bar to cheer you up. As our team grew, so did our capabilities. We became more than just a group of coworkers. We were a team in the truest sense. We looked out for each other, celebrated our successes together, and supported one another through the challenges. It was a transformation that took us from being a functional department to being a standout team within the company, admired by our peers and valued by our superiors. Last fall, our old boss retired. When he left, we all felt sadness and anxiety about what was next. Then came Daniel. He was introduced to us at a morning meeting, barely a weekend of the new year. First impressions? He was young, around my age, which I thought might be a good thing at first. Fresh people, fresh ideas, right? But it didn't take long for that impression to crumble. From day one, Daniel carried himself with an air of superiority that rubbed everyone the wrong way. It wasn't just his tone or the way he talked down to us. It was his entire demeanor. He walked around the department like he owned the place, barely acknowledging anyone's presence unless it was to point out a mistake or to assign more work. His attitude towards the team, especially the women, was the worst part. He'd question their decisions more harshly, dismiss their suggestions, and in general treat them with less respect than their male counterparts. It wasn't just my observation. We all saw it, talked about it, but hoped maybe it was just initial hiccups. Maybe he'd settle down, get to know us, and things would change. They didn't. It became clear pretty quickly that Daniel wasn't just having a rough start. This was who he was. Arrogant and unfortunately, sexist. It made the workplace tense. The easygoing atmosphere we had under our old boss vanished. Conversations became shorter. People became more guarded, especially when Daniel was around. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. At first, I thought maybe he was under pressure to prove himself, being so young and given such a big role. But no amount of pressure excuses treating people poorly. I watched as the team's morale plummeted and it became harder to get up and go to work knowing what awaited us. This one day was the first time I heard Daniel lose it completely. Daniel was yelling at Clara, one of our newest team members. She was only 19, fresh out of training, and trying her best. Sure, she made mistakes here and there, but who doesn't? Anyway, Daniel wasn't just correcting her. He was tearing her apart over some form she filled out wrong. The kind of mistake that's a quick fix. But he was acting like it was the end of the world. Clara was standing there, taking it all, her face red, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was one of those moments that make you feel sick inside, seeing someone so young and eager being broken down like that. After Daniel stormed off, slamming his office door behind him, I went over to Clara. She was still crying, her whole body shaking. I got her a coffee and brought her to June, our office. Grandma, everyone loves June. She's got that way about her. Makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. She took Claire under her wing, calming her down, talking to her in that soothing way she has. After that, I told the rest of the team what happened. Nobody could believe it. Well, they could, but it was more like they didn't want to. Daniel's behavior was unacceptable. A line crossed. It sparked something in us. A sort of collective decision without anyone actually saying it. We were done. One of the guys who'd been at the company the longest said he couldn't handle working in a place where people were treated like that. Suddenly everyone was talking, saying they felt the same way. The idea of quitting together started off as a half joke, but the more we talked, the more it felt like the right thing to do. By the end of the day, 3 of my coworkers who had been with the company for 25 years walked into Daniel's office and quit on the spot. They came out telling us he called them worthless and overpaid. That was the last straw. We all agreed we couldn't work in a place that allowed someone like Daniel to treat people that way. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. Leaving jobs without having something else lined up is scary. But there was this feeling among us, like we were doing something important, not just for ourselves, but for each other. We decided that everyone except me would quit. The plan was to leave Daniel and the company in a tight spot right before a big customer audit. I was the only one qualified to lead the prep for that audit, and we thought my quitting later would make the biggest impact. The next day, the whole department had already quit in protest against Daniel's behavior, leaving just me. We were 3 weeks away from a massive customer audit. Daniel didn't know yet about the mass resignation. He was about to find out. I found him in his office, busy with papers. He looked up, annoyed, as if my presence was the last thing he needed. He didn't waste time asking why I was there. I didn't beat around the bush, either. I told him straight up about the audit. He knew the audit was big, but he hadn't connected the dots about the team's departure and its impact on the preparation. Then I told him I was quitting, too. I didn't stick around to watch him process at all. It was a bold move, quitting like that, but it felt right. It wasn't long before Greg, our production VP, noticed the change. The look on his face went from confusion to worry in a matter of seconds. He walked over to me, clearly looking for answers. I told him everything. How Daniel had lost his temper with Clara, how he had insulted her, and how it had led to everyone quitting. He immediately called Robert, the CEO, right there in front of me. From the bits I overheard, it was clear Greg was explaining the gravity of the situation, mentioning the upcoming audit and how much was at stake. Soon after, Robert arrived with the rest of the upper management. They were clearly worried about the auditants. Started discussing potential solutions right there. They talked about hiring temporary workers or bringing in consultants. But it all came back to needing our team's specific skills. Then they asked me what I thought should be done. It felt odd to be asked for my opinion in such a crucial moment, especially by the people who usually made all the decisions. I said the only thing that made sense was to deal with Daniel. That's where the problem started, after all. They all headed to Daniel's office, and I followed. Everyone seemed tense, except for Daniel, who still had that annoying grin on his face. The CEO started talking. He wasn't happy. It was clear from his tone. In the way he looked at Daniel. I explained everything. How Daniel had treated us, especially the new girl, Clara. I didn't hold back. I told them about the mass resignation and how we felt working under Daniel. Daniel tried to interrupt, to defend himself, but the CEO wasn't having any of it. The room was silent as the CEO told Daniel he was fired. Daniel's face went from smug to shock in a second. He looked like he couldn't believe what was happening. After Daniel was told to leave, security came to escort him out. It all happened so fast. One moment Daniel was the boss, and the next, he was being let out of the office like he was a stranger. The top management started discussing what to do next, and they turned to me. They asked if I could take over Daniel's position. It was unexpected, but I accepted. It was clear from the get-go that if I were to step into this role, things had to change. I needed my team back, but not just back to the same old routine. They deserved more. They had shown incredible resilience and loyalty, and it was only right that this was recognized formally. So I put it on the table. I wanted them back, but with a 15% raise across the board. I wanted to show them their worth, that their actions and loyalty meant something tangible. Negotiating these terms wasn't as hard as I thought it would. Robert understood where I was coming from. He had seen the fallout, the unity, and he knew the value of what we had as a team. The raises were approved without much back and forth. The audit was our immediate focus. Everyone understood its importance, not just for the company, but for us as a team. We divided the tasks based on what each person did best. Clara, who had been the newest before everything went down, took charge of organizing the paperwork. Her attention to detail was unmatched, and after the incident with the wrong form, she was more determined than ever to prove herself. We reviewed every process, checked every document, and ran through every scenario that the auditors could throw at us. The day of the auditor arrived quicker than any of us had anticipated. The auditors were thorough, asking questions, requesting documents, and inspecting our processes. When they asked for something, we had it ready, often before they even finished their request. It wasn't until the following day, when the audit results came in all clear, no issues found, that we finally let ourselves believe it. We had done it together.